Well, and that really leads directly into the next question, which is that the battle in our mind is normally driven by false core beliefs from our past. So why do these past old messages have such power over our current behaviors and ways of thinking?
So it's definitely tied to our past experiences, what we can remember that happened in those experiences, and primarily how it made us feel in those instances, because it's those moments that create the messages that we hear in our head that say, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. All of the messages that we continue to replay over and over. And the other thing that our brain does, because it says, this was painful, this was hurtful, we need to make sure that we don't ever feel this way again.
Back to the survival system.
Exactly.
Our limbic brain.
Right. And so then it's almost as though that becomes a filter of what we experience that is always searching to make sure that we never feel that way again. And it's interesting because the way that we end up internalizing those messages, and almost to the point where we convince ourselves that this is true about us, we don't look for other messages. We don't look for anything else that would be contrary to what we believe about ourselves. And even the way that somebody might say, oh, I think that you're all of these really great, amazing things. And the minute that we hear that, our brain says, they don't really know you.
Because we've heard that other message for
Right.
so long. It's normal to us.
Right. Yeah. It becomes the tape that plays over and over and over and over again. And so I think that that is definitely part of the struggle. One of the things that is extremely profound in this whole process of healing is that the minute that we start saying those things out loud to another person, that we're willing to share these really deep, painful, intimate parts of our story, those messages, they lose their power over us, because it isn't something that now we're keeping inside. Nobody else gets to know this about us, that we've decided that, you know what, I don't like feeling this way. I don't like hearing that message. And I'm going to share this with somebody. And the more that we share our story, the less power it has over us.
Amen.
It's like when you hear somebody for the first time, they share their story and they're crying, and, but then even 3 years later, they can share the exact story, but they've shared it so much, and the healing that that's brought to them and the healing that it's done to their mind and their brain, it still can be kind of painful, but they're not going to weep the way that they did the first time they shared their story.
Just makes me so excited. I mean, I love story work, and I love the way it collides with the brain, and just the idea of that as we share our story and we're held by the face of others,
Right.
like it doesn't have that impact. I think there's a story specifically for me in junior high that had to deal with sexuality and being called out by a principal and friends, seeing this moment and feeling so deeply humiliated. And some of the lies that were associated with that moment with me were, I was sexually perverted, or I was sexually bad, or I was sexually broken, just cementing some of these. And Nick, I think about an experience, this was maybe a year ago now. We were on a road trip together, and I'm like, Nick, like this story is holding weight for me, and I've processed it before, but like, I just think there's more here. And I just invited Nick to hold this story from my childhood. And oh my goodness, the perspective you offered of like that thing that the principal said to you in that moment, that wasn't true. That's a lie. And so even just getting to invite other people in to shape, to re-speak, to rewrite some of our own stories, not only does it lessen the power that it holds over us, but again, I think it actually allows us to mature, because some of our, like, we get stuck in some of those younger stories, and I might be 27 now, but I come to that story with Nick as if I'm a 12-year-old.
You get kind of stuck there.
I was so stuck there, and to hear your words to reshape and give me context to that lessens the power of it and invites me back to identity. John, that's not who you are. Like that moment doesn't define you.
Yeah, I think for a lot of men and women in recovery, it's an opportunity to diminish the shame they're feeling, because again, in my story, I felt like, what's wrong with me? Why would I do these things? There must be something broken, or I'm just guilty or wrong or sinful or whatever. And then when you recognize some of these inherent needs we all have, Dr. Kurt Thompson talks a lot about how the human brain is designed to feel safe, soothed, seen, and secure. And we begin to have those needs like from the moment of birth. And not because we tried to have those or we're needy. No, it's because we're human. And so if at 4 or 5 years old, we didn't feel seen, which is very much my story of 4 siblings within 4.5 years and my mom being overwhelmed, stressed, and tired, and I'm a middle child, my message was, you're not seen, you're not valued. And that might be confusing at first for some. It's like, well, wait a minute, then did you act out sexually at 4 or 5? It's like, well, no, that was not the connection then. But that was the pattern in my thinking that at like 14 and 15, when I was in sports and not, the all-star that I wanted to be, that feeling of I'm not seen, I'm not good enough. And when I was then getting involved in sexual activities of acting out, with pornography or lust or fantasy, those feelings did start to get fused of that feeling of I'm not seen, I'm not good enough. But then I act out in fantasy, and for that moment of time, I feel seen and awesome. And even though it's a sinful behavior, that part of my brain is now getting fused to that memory. And then 20 years later, I could still be in that place that when I get triggered of feeling like I'm not being seen or valued, my brain goes, oh, we know how to fix that because this is what we started doing at 13, 14, 15. And when I saw that pattern, it again just diminished that shame of, well, it's not because I'm, there's something wrong with me. It's because I grew up in a broken world and there are sinful people and we're all impacted by it. This is just what happened along the way in my story. And now I can work to unravel the power that has in my story in my present moment.
Yeah, it's so good. It makes me think, Nick, just to finish that story of like, the lie that I believed in that moment was that I was sexually broken. The reality was I was just a sexual middle schooler hitting puberty that didn't know any better. And what I needed was to be trained and guided, not shamed and punished in that moment. But that shame and that punishing led me to believe the lie that I was humiliated or rejected or always outcast. And to your point, well, pornography then offered the exact opposites: acceptance, this belonging, this love, this validation. Even if it was fake and false, some of those needs were being met. And